This movie review is about the movie Dallas Buyers Club. This movie was made in 2003, but it takes you back in time to the 1980s, where the AIDS and HIV epidemic was huge. There were tons and tons of newspaper articles about this disease, and so many cases that it was almost impossible for hospitals to treat. That's kind of why the main character, Ron Woodruff, creates his version of the Dallas Buyers Club, which is a way for people to sell drugs to people who need it, but we'll get more into that later. So the movie starts off very intense. The main character, Ron, is having sex with two women right before he's about to mount a bull for bull riding, which is one of his passions. And starts off pretty abruptly as soon as the movie starts. And then moments later in the film, he gets rushed to the hospital, and the doctor is pretty bluntly put, you have HIV. And he's given 30 days to live because he didn't know about it and he didn't take the proper treatment beforehand. Woodruff laughs it off and automatically assumes that the doctors are wrong because he believes that only gays can get HIV/AIDS. Messing with his mind a little bit, he goes from defiant, no I don't have it, to what if I do. The movie starts after that, going day by day, as he's given 30 days. On day one, he's with some friends. They're doing cocaine, they're drinking, they're having some ladies over, and he's sitting there with his friend talking, his friend TJ, and TJ goes, you obviously don't have it. You have a P-word addiction. And that's definitely shown throughout the film. And that scene, especially shortly after, Ron ends up having a threesome with two women. So it definitely shows that he is a straight man. But he does do some research. And as Kenny G put from RogerEbert.com, Woodruff was also, the story tells us, a bigoted redneck who bristled with more than just a fear of mortality when he got his diagnosis. In turn, he kind of wrestled with the idea of, I am a straight man. Kenny goes on to say, and how his growth allows him to work side by side with a flamboyant transsexual, a person he would not have given the time of day to in his prior mode of life, but possibly would have given a beatdown to. And this quote just goes to show how much he changes throughout the film. Kenny also states, Woodruff muddles through this past to figure out how he got infected, and flashes back to a rather overly boogity scene in which Woodruff aggressively has unprotected sex with two women, one of whom is a junkie. Thinking about that, Woodruff realizes that he probably does have AIDS, and starts to kind of take the proper care. The hospital originally tries to give him this drug called AZT. It wasn't really tested a whole lot, but the FDA did approve it. But the more research that Ron did, the more he realized that this wasn't his thing. So, soon, as Scott A. puts from the New York Times, he is smuggling pills across the border, at one point disguised as a cancer-stricken priest. Back home, he circumvents the rules against selling unapproved medication by starting a subscription service that gives the movie its name, Dallas Buyers Club. Patrons pay a monthly fee and receive regular orders of Ron's contraband. So he wants to end up helping people because the AZT drug that the hospital is trying to sell people is up to $12,000 a year. Ron's subscription is only $400 a month, giving a total to $4,800 a year, something that someone could afford. And he goes to places like Mexico and Israel to get these drugs that he's done his research about. Nowadays, that never could have happened. You can't smuggle drugs across borders. You can't have these secretive drug-selling locations. And it just shows how different life was in the 1980s. Scott also sheds light on the movie by saying, instead, Dallas Buyers Club presents a fable of a homophobe's awakening, with supporting roles given by Miss Gardner's kind doctor, who ends up helping Ron and helping her patients in the long run, and Rayon, played by Jared Leto, a troubled transgender person who becomes Ron's business partner. So as I stated earlier, Ron was very, very homophobic and automatically assumed that, I'm not gay, I don't have HIV/AIDS. But he meets this person named Rayon who's in the hospital bed next to him in the beginning of the movie. And together they help people. And together they lengthen their lives. Unfortunately, Rayon does die in the movie. Spoiler, I'm sorry. But it definitely sheds light on the whole FDA and drug crisis that is still kind of present today. There are still problems with people paying ridiculous amounts for medication. There was an issue a couple years ago where medication like this for HIV/AIDS was just absolutely ridiculously expensive, and people can't afford it. And what Ron's Dallas Buyers Club allowed was for people to afford, for people to get better in a healthier and cheaper way that ultimately lengthened their lives. Ron ended up living for 7 years instead of 30 days because he did his research and he found alternative medication that was better for him and cheaper.